welcome to our third read aloud of Wonder. We left off where August was just getting dropped off for his first day of school. So I want you to be thinking about those predictions that you made last time about what you thought was going to happen on his first day. And we are going to continue. The next chapter is called Locks. I went straight to room 301 on the third floor. Now, I was glad I'd gone on that little tour because I knew exactly where to go and I didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids started sitting at different desks. The desks were in a half circle facing the chalkboard, so I chose the desk in the middle toward the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head way down, just looking up enough from under my bangs to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat down next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. "Hey, August!" It was Charlotte, giving me her little wave as she sat down at a desk in front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit way up in the front of the class, I don't know. "Hey," I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack. Jack. "What's up?" he said, nodding at me. "Hey, Jack," I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wish I hadn't done because it felt kind of uncool. So now I want you to think about that other prediction that you made of the three who you think you would become friends with. So right now it's kind of seeming like maybe Jack might be his friend, but it'd be interesting to see if that holds up. So let's see. "Okay, kids, okay, everybody settle down," said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Miss Petosa, on the chalkboard. "Everybody find a seat, please. Come in," she said to a couple kids who had just walked in the room. "There's a seat there and right there." She hadn't noticed me yet. "Now, the first thing I want everyone to do is stop talking and..." She noticed me. "Put your backpacks down and quiet down." She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. "I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart," she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. So thinking about Miss Petosa now, I want you to think about maybe what August and Mrs. Petosa's relationship is going to be like. Are they going to have a good relationship with each other? Are they going to have maybe a rocky relationship? I want you to think about, based off of us just meeting Miss Petosa, what do you predict their relationship's going to be like? And Miss Petosa is his homeroom teacher. So if you're thinking about that, then you can pause the video to write down maybe any predictions that you have. Alright, let's see, where did we leave off? "I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart," she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. "When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you to. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside the class, but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you can't switch locks. Then, if there's time at the end of this period, we're all going to get to know each other a little better. Okay?" "Okay." She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names out loud. "Okay, so Julian Albans," she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, "Here," at the same time. "Hi, Julian," she said, making a note on her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it out toward him. "Come pick it up," she said, in kind of a no-nonsense. He got up and took it from her. Exmena chin. She handed a folder to each kid as she read off the names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk just a few seats away. When she called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teenager, she said, "Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay?" She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me. Just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the right side of the desk, so it was kind of like a wall between his desk and mine. "Maya Markowitz?" Miss Petosa was saying. "Here," said a girl about 4 desks down from me. "Miles Norrie?" "Here," said the kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a poor you look. "August Pullman?" said Miss Petosa. "Here," I said quietly, raising my hand a little bit. "Hi, August," she said, smiling at me very nicely when I went to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into my back for a few seconds. What do you think that means, eyes burning into my back? It's kind of like that language that we talked about in class before, where you don't actually mean what you're saying. Their eyes are not burning his back. What does it mean that all of their eyes are, he felt their eyes burning his back, burning into his back? I want you to think about what that could maybe mean. Felt their eyes burning into his back. And think about how he's feeling, too. Where did we leave off? I resisted spinning, okay, here we go. I stood in front of the class, and everybody looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I'd used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock, but couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. Miss Petosa called out the next few names. The last name was Jackwell. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, "Okay, so everyone write down your combination somewhere safe that you won't forget, okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3.2 times per semester, Mrs. Garcia has a list of all the combination numbers. Now go ahead, take your locks out of your folders, and spend a couple minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you already went ahead and did that anyway." She was looking at Henriette when she said that. "And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. And then you guys can tell me a little something about yourselves. And we'll, get to know each other. Sound good? Good." She smiled at everyone, though I felt like she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile, so there comes that shiny smile. So if you bring back what you thought shiny smile means, now he's bringing that up again. He's saying it's not like her like Mrs. Garcia's shiny smile, but a normal smile, like she meant it. So that kind of tells us, it says that it wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile, but a normal smile like she meant it. So that means when August was saying Mrs. Garcia had a shiny smile, she had a fake smile. She didn't actually mean it when she was smiling at him. So he's saying now that Miss Petosa has a normal smile and she actually means it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she'd look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on top of her head. But in fact, she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 6. Haircut kind of like a boy's and a big white shirt kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock to open, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put the backpack between us, I most definitely would have offered to help him. This next chapter is called Around the Room. Miss Petosa told us a little bit about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from and how she always wanted to teach, and she left her job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hand. Yes, she said, to look at the list to remember his name. Julian? That's cool how you're pursuing your dream, he said. Thank you. You're welcome, he smiled proudly. Okay, so why don't you tell us about yourself, Julian? Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from the Beecher Lower School? About half the kids raised their hands. Okay, so a few of you already know each other, but the rest of you, I guess, are new to school, right? To the school, right? Okay, so everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you, and if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't already know about you. Okay? Okay. So let's start with Julian, and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. So what I want you to do now, if you were in this situation and it was your first day of school, I want you to think of 2 things. What are 2 things that you would share about yourself? That you would, if you were sitting in that room of students and you had to share 2 things about yourself. So put yourself in those students' shoes and think about what would you share if you were them. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. Okay, whenever you're ready, Miss Petosa said. Okay, so number 1 is that, do me a favor and start with your names, okay? Miss Petosa interrupted. It'll help me remember everyone. Oh, okay. My name is Julian, and the number 1 thing I'd like to tell everyone about myself is that I just got Battleground Mystic for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And number 2 is that we got a ping pong table this summer. Very nice. I love ping pong, said Miss Petosa. Does anyone have any questions for Julian? Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or 1 player, said the kid named Miles. Not those kinds of questions, guys, said Miss Petosa. Okay, so how about you? She pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was closest to the front. Oh, sure. Charlotte didn't hesitate for even a second, like she already knew exactly what she wanted to say. My name is Charlotte. I have 2 sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Suki in July. We got her from an animal shelter, and she's so cute. That's great, Charlotte. Thank you, said Miss Petosa. Okay, then, who's next? All right, the next chapter is called Lamb to the Slaughter. Like a lamb to the slaughter. Something that you say about someone who goes somewhere calmly knowing that nothing unpleasant is going to happen to them. I Googled it last night. That's what I was thinking when Miss Petosa called my name and suddenly it was my turn to talk. My name is August, I said, and yeah, I kind of mumbled it. What? Said someone. Can you speak up, honey? Said Miss Petosa. My name is August, I said louder, forcing myself to look up. I have a sister named Via and a dog named Daisy, and that's it. Wonderful, said Miss Petosa. Anyone have any questions for August? No one said anything. Okay, you're next, said Miss Petosa to Jack. Wait, I have a question for August, said Julian, raising his hand. Why do you have that tiny braid in the back of your hair? Is that like a Padawan thing? Yeah, I shrugged, nodded. What's a Padawan thing? Said Miss Petosa, smiling at me. It's from Star Wars, answered Julian. A Padawan is a Jedi apprentice. Oh, interesting, answered Miss Petosa, looking at me. So you're into Star Wars, August? I guess, I nodded, not looking up because what I really wanted to do was just slide under the desk. Who's your favorite character, Julian asked. I started thinking maybe he wasn't so bad. Jango Fett. What about Darth Sidious? He said. Do you like him? Okay, guys, you can talk about Star Wars stuff at recess, said Miss Petosa cheerfully. But let's keep going. We haven't heard from you yet, she said to Jack. Now it's Jack's turn to talk, but I admit I didn't hear a word he said. Maybe no one got the Darth Sidious thing, and maybe Julian didn't mean anything at all, but in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Darth Sidious' face gets burned by Sith lightning, and becomes totally deformed. His skin gets all shriveled up and his whole face just kind of melts. I peeked at Julian and he was looking at me. Yeah, he knew what he was saying. So thinking about what Julian was just doing, we can kind of reflect on what he was doing. He was kind of making fun of August in a way by asking if he was like a character or if he liked a character from the Star Wars that had something wrong with his face and had issues with his face. So in that way, Julian was kind of making fun of him without other people realizing he was making fun of him. Alright, this next chapter is called Choose Kind. There was a lot of shuffling around when the bell rang and everybody got up to leave. I checked my schedule and it said my next class was English, room 321. I didn't stop to see if anyone else from my homeroom was going that way. I just zoomed out of the class and down the hall and sat down as far away from the front as possible. The teacher, a really tall man with a yellow beard, was writing on the chalkboard. Kids came in laughing and talking in little groups, but I didn't look up. Basically the same thing that happened in homeroom happened again. No one sat next to me except for Jack, who was joking around with some other kids who weren't in our homeroom. I could tell Jack was the kind of kid other kids like. He had a lot of friends. He made people laugh. When the second bell rang, everyone got quiet, and the teacher turned around and faced us. He said his name was Mr. Brown, and then he started talking about what we would be doing this semester. At a certain point, somewhere between A Wrinkle in Time and Shen of the Sea, he noticed me, but kept right on talking. I was mostly doodling in my notebook when he talked, but every once in a while I would sneak a look at the other students. Charlotte was in class. So were Julian and Henry. Miles wasn't. Mr. Brown had written on the chalkboard in big letters, Precept. Okay, everyone, write this down at the very top of the very first page in your English notebook. And as we did what he told us to do, he said, okay, so who can tell me what a precept is? Does anyone know? No one raised their hands. Mr. Brown smiled, nodded, and turned around to write on the chalkboard again. Precepts equals rules about really important things. So what's a precept? I want you to think about that. Rules about really important things. I'm going to write that on the board so then you can remember that. Like a motto, someone called out. Like a motto, said Mr. Brown, nodding as he continued writing on the board. Like a famous quote, like a line from a fortune cookie. Any saying or ground rule that can motivate you. Basically, a precept is anything that helps guide us when making decisions about really important things. He wrote all that on the chalkboard, then turned around and faced us. So, what are some really important things? He asked us. A few kids raised their hands, and as he pointed to them, they gave their answers, which he wrote on the chalkboard in really, really sloppy handwriting. Rules, schoolwork, homework, what else? He said, as he wrote, not even turning around. Just call out things. He wrote everything everyone called out. Family, parents, pets. One girl called out the environment. The environment, he wrote on his chalkboard and added, our world. Sharks, because they eat dead things in the ocean, said one boy. One of the boys, a kid named Reed, and Mr. Brown wrote down sharks. Bees, seatbelts, recycling, friends. Okay, said Mr. Brown, writing all those things down. He turned around, and when he finished writing to face us again. But no one's named the most important thing of all. We all looked at him out of ideas. God? Said one kid, and I could tell that even though Mr. Brown wrote God down, that wasn't the answer he was looking for. Without saying anything else, he wrote down, who we are. Who we are, he said, underlining each word as he said it. Who we are, us, right? What kind of people are we? What kind of person are you? Isn't that the most important thing of all? Isn't that the kind of question we should be asking ourselves all the time? What kind of person am I? Did anybody else happen to notice the plaque next to the door of this school? Anyone read what it says? Anyone? He looked around, but no one knew the answer. It says, "Know thyself," he said, smiling and nodding. "And learning who you are is what you're here to do." I thought we were here to learn English," Jack cracked, which made everyone laugh too. "Oh yeah, and that too," Mr. Brown answered, which I thought was very cool of him. He turned around and wrote in big, huge black letters that spread all the way across the chalkboard, "Mr. Brown's September Precept. When given the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind." Okay, so everybody, he said, facing us again, "I want you to start a brand new section in your notebooks and call it Mr. Brown's Precepts." He kept on talking as we did what he was telling us to do. "Put today's date at the top of the first page, and from now on, at the beginning of every month, I'm going to write a new Mr. Brown precept on the chalkboard, and you're going to write it down in your notebook. Then we are going to discuss that precept and what it means. At the end of the month, you're going to write an essay about it and about what it means to you. So, at the end of the year, you'll have your own list of precepts to take away with you." Over the summer, I asked all my students to come up with their very own personal precept. I write it on a postcard and mail it to me wherever you go on your summer vacation. "People really do that?" said one girl whose name I didn't know. "Oh yeah," he answered. "People really do that. I've had students send me precepts years after they graduated from this school, actually. It's pretty amazing." He paused and stroked his beard. "But anyway, next summer seems like a long way off, I know," he joked, which made us laugh. "So everybody relax a bit while I take attendance. And then when we're finished with that, I'll start telling you about all the fun stuff we're going to be doing this year in English." He pointed to Jack when he said this, which was also funny, so we all laughed at it. As I wrote down Mr. Brown's September precept, I suddenly realized I was going to like school no matter what. So thinking about his precept, I'm going to reread it to you really quick. "When given the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind." Now I want you to think about when is a time that you have chosen to be kind. And that could have been recently too. So reflecting on that question, when is a time or what is a time that you have chosen to be kind? And what's that example of what was happening? How did you choose to be kind? Alright, lunch. Via had warned me about lunch in middle school, so I guess I should have known it would be hard. I just hadn't expected it to be this hard. Basically, all the kids from all the 5th grade classes poured into the cafeteria at the same time, talking loudly and bumping into one another while they ran to different tables. One of the lunchroom teachers said said something about no seat saving allowed, but I didn't know what she meant, and maybe no one else did either, because just about everybody was saving seats for their friends. I tried to sit down at one table, but the kid in the next chair said, "Oh, sorry, but somebody else is sitting here." So I moved to an empty table and just waited for everyone to stop stampeding and the lunchroom teacher to tell us what to do next. As she started telling the cafeteria rules, I looked around to see where Jack Will was sitting, but I didn't see him on my side of the room. Kids were still coming in as the teacher started calling off the first few tables to get their trays and stand in line at the counter. Julian, Henry, and Miles were sitting at a table toward the back of the room. Mom had packed me a cheese sandwich, graham crackers, and a juice box, so I didn't need to stand in line when my table was called. Instead, I just concentrated on opening my backpack, pulling out my lunch bag, and slowly opening the aluminum foil wrapping my sandwich. I could tell I was being stared at without even looking up. I knew that people were nudging each other, watching me out of the corner of their eyes. I thought I was used to those kinds of stares by now, but I guess I wasn't. There was one table of girls that I knew were whispering about me because they were talking behind their hands. Their eyes and whispers kept bouncing over to me. I hate the way I eat. I know how weird it looks. I had a surgery to fix my cleft palate when I was a baby, and then a second cleft surgery when I was 4. But I still have a hole in the roof of my mouth. And even though I had a jaw alignment surgery a few years ago, I still had to chew food in the front of my mouth. I didn't even realize how this looked until I was at my birthday party once, and one of the kids told the mom of the birthday boy he didn't want to sit next to me because I was too messy with all the food crumbs shooting out of my mouth. I know the kid wasn't trying to be mean, but he got in trouble later, and his mom called my mom that night to apologize. When I got home from the party, I went to the bathroom mirror and started eating a saltine cracker to see what I looked like when I was chewing. The kid was right. I eat like a tortoise, if you've ever seen a tortoise eating. Like some prehistoric swamp thing. Alright, let's read one more chapter. So this is called The Summer Table. Hey, is this seat taken? I looked up and a girl I never saw before was standing across from my table with a lunch tray full of food. She had long, wavy brown hair and wore a brown t-shirt with a purple peace sign on it. Oh, no, I said. She put her lunch tray down on the table, plopped her backpack on the floor, and sat down across from me. She started to eat the mac and cheese on her plate. Ugh, she said after swallowing the first bite. I should have brought a sandwich like you did. Yeah, I said, nodding. My name is Summer, by the way. What's yours? August. Cool, she said. Summer! Another girl came over to the table carrying a tray. Why are you sitting here? Come back to the table. It was too crowded, Summer answered. Come sit here. There's more room. The other girl looked confused for a second. I realized she had been one of the girls I caught looking at me just a few minutes earlier, hand cupped over her mouth, whispering. I guess Summer had been one of the girls at the table, too. Never mind, said the girl, leaving. Summer looked at me, shrugged, smiled, and took another bite of her mac and cheese. Hey, our names kind of match, she said as she chewed. I guess she could tell I didn't know what she meant. Summer? August? She said, smiling, her eyes open wide as she waited for me to get it. Oh, yeah, I said after a second. We can make this the summer-only lunch table, she said. Only kids with summer names can sit here. Let's see, is there anyone named June or July? There's a Maya, I said. Technically May is spring, Summer answered, but if she wanted to sit here, we can make an exception. She said as if she actually thought the whole thing through. There's Julian. That's like the name Julia, which comes from July. I didn't say anything. There's a kid named Reed in my English class, I said. Yeah, I know Reed. And how is Reed a summer name? She asked. I don't know, I shrugged. I just picture like a reed of grass being a summer thing. Yeah, okay, she nodded, pulling out her notebook. And Miss Petosa could sit here too. That kind of sounds like the word petal, which I think of as a summer thing too. I have her for homeroom, I said. I have her for math, she answered, making a face. She started writing a list of names on the second to last page of her notebook. So, who else? She said. By the end of lunch, we had come up with a whole list of names of kids and teachers who could sit at our table if they wanted. Most of the names weren't actually summer names, but they were names that had some kind of connection to summer. I even found a way of making Jack Will's name work by pointing out that you could turn his name into a sentence about summer. Jack will go to the beach, which Summer agreed worked fine. But if someone doesn't have a summer name and wants to sit with us, she said very seriously, we'll still let them if they're nice, okay? Okay, I nodded, even if it's a winter name. Cool beans, she answered, giving me a thumbs up. Summer looked like her name. She had a tan and her eyes were green like a leaf. So thinking about the girl that he has just met now, Summer, I want you to now think about how August feels about his interaction with Summer. And be able to explain it. So we're not just saying he feels happy. We want to say if you think he feels happy about her, or we think that he enjoys her, or maybe the opposite. I want you to be able to explain why. Why do you think that? So reviewing our questions from our reading today, what will August's relationship with Miss Petosa be like? What does eyes burning into my back mean? What are 2 things that you would share about yourself if you were in that classroom? And then just remembering Mr. Brown's precepts means rules about really important things. When is a time you have chosen to be kind? And then how does August feel about summer? So I want you to be thinking about those and then Some of these questions we may be answering in our next one, and then I want you to do some reflection on those. So be writing these down, and then we'll talk about those next time.